across the idea, sometimes the running gag, that you can kind of divide the world into two groups of people. You can buy t-shirts with this on. There are two groups of people in the world. There are two groups of people in the world, optimists and pessimists. There are two groups of people in the world, those that have the toilet roll over, those that have the toilet roll under. Not sure how you'd have a third group there. Toilet roll stacked on the system. I don't know. Two groups of people in the world, those that do their toothpaste from the end of the tube very carefully, my gran, those that just grab it and squeeze it until it's a horrible mess, everybody else in my house. My particular favourite version is the one that goes, there are two types of people in the world, those that can extrapolate from incomplete information. Yeah, that's either funny or I'll explain later if you want me to. But the same can be true of kind of rules and regulations in general. I think there are two types of people in the world. And the first group are the ones who want to know what it is that they can't do. What is prohibited? What shouldn't I do? Which actually, when you think about it, is quite a biblical approach to life. You know, the Ten Commandments are usually phrased, do not do something. This is what you cannot do. You cannot go around killing people. You cannot go around coveting your neighbour's donkey. You cannot do these things. Or if you go even further back to the Garden of Eden, God says, do not eat from this tree. There are rules that tell you what you can't do. And it's interesting, a prohibitive rule set is quite interesting because it sounds very negative. And often when people talk about the Bible who are not Christian, who've kind of heard these things, these are the bits of the Bible they know, they're like, but the Bible just tells us what we can't do. It's a book of restrictions. It's really oppressive and I don't like it because it's just, you can't do this. But actually, a prohibitive rule set, these are the things you cannot do, set of rules, is actually very freeing. There's immense freedom in this is what you can't do, because if it's not on the list of things you can't do, you could do it. So if you're in the Garden of Eden, can I eat from that tree? Yep. Can I swim in the river? Yep. Can I build a tree house? Yep. Can I ride around on a giraffe? Yep. If you want to. Because all these things are not things you can't do. So you can do them. You may not want to, but you can. It's very free. There is a flip side. With a set of rules like this, there's always people that go, how close can I get to the edge? How close to the boundary of what I can't do can I do? I know you said I can't eat that fruit, God, but can I lick it? There's a great video somewhere of what happens if you get a bunch of 4-year-old boys together and you put a chocolate cake on a table in front of them and say you can't eat it. There's a less good video of it happening with the girls, because all the girls go, oh, all right. And they just go and do something else and they leave the chocolate cake on the table. All the boys go, and then they sort of, the one that gets really close, and then one of them actually genuinely goes, and you can see him going, I didn't eat it. And then the other ones go, no, no, no. And then they go, all right, if we're all going to do that. By the end, there's a lot of fingers in the chocolate cake. When we know what we can't do, sometimes we push the boundary. But then there's a second set of people, and the second set of people are the ones who actually know what you can do. And these people are kind of quite happy living within a set of parameters. This is what is allowed. This is what I'm going to do. It's a simpler, more straightforward approach. If you want to think of it in terms of a game, it's chess. This is what this piece can do. Still got a lot of variety. I'm told there's more moves, potential moves in a chess game than there are atoms in the universe, or something. It escalates very quickly. So you've got lots of freedom, lots of creativity, but within a set of neatly defined rules and boxes. You know, those that want to know can't, they're the mavericks. How far can I push this? Those that want to know the can rules are like, I like my life simple and organised. I like those people. But again, there's a flip side. The danger here is that we can become so focused on what we can do that sometimes we forget that it's not all that we can do. And I want you to hold on to that thought, because that's kind of where we're going later on. Now, a moment ago, we heard from Paul's first letter to the Corinthian church. And, it's one of his good letters. One of the letters that I like, because it makes a lot of sense to me. One of his kind of more well-known letters, like Romans and Corinthians, they're kind of the big letters of Paul. But this is not really one of his theological letters. There is theology in it, because it's Paul, and you can't avoid it. But it's a very practical letter. There's lots of advice, there's lots of wisdom across certain topics. He's writing to a particular group of people going through particular circumstances, and he wants to support them, he wants to advise them. And to our benefit, it turns out that lots of the things that they're going through are things that we might go through, and we learn from them. But we're not just getting theology for the sake of theology. We're getting it applied, made real, grounded in people's lives, which is why it is helpful to us. And yet, because it's Paul, he can't get away, and shouldn't get away, from talking about spiritual stuff as well. And in chapter 12, the bit that we heard, we get this gifts of the Spirit. It's one of those bits of the Bible that kind of has a name. It is the gifts of the Spirit, they're all inverted commas, capital letters. It's one of those bits that lots of people know, lots of us are familiar with. It gets talked about a lot. People really like to get into it. There's lots of analysis, there's lots of breaking down. There are some people who will say, we've got these 9 gifts, but we can break them into 3 groups of 3 gifts that all sit nicely together. Some people get very excited about the fact that Paul says gifts of healing. Is that different to a gift of wisdom? Does that mean you get multiple goes at healing, but you only get to be wise once? What does this mean? Others create hierarchies. This gift is more important than this gift. And I think we do it because as people, as humans, we have this need to pin things down and to clarify and to slot everything into those nice, neat boxes. We like to divide the world into 2 groups, as it were. We like to find limits and mark them out and say, we understand this because I have reduced it to an infographic. I've made a nice pie chart. Here is a picture representing 9 gifts. Now I understand this thing. I get that. I have that drive with most things. I understand the need to want to break it down and understand it and get your head around it. But it presents us with a challenge. And the challenge that we get here, and we get in other places in the Bible, but we get here, is how do we see God? Do we see God as a set of rules and permissions? Is God there just to tell us what we can and can't do? Are we going to limit God and reduce him to only what we can understand? There's a well-known, famous-ish quote that appears to pop up several times. Different people seem to have said very similar things at different times. One of them is Voltaire, another one is Henry Rousseau, so attribute it where you like. But somebody said, man created God in his own image. Man, being a gentleman, has returned the favour. We, as people, see God as us. Which kind of makes sense. This is what we know. We know what we are, but then we tend to go, oh, well, then God is like us, but a bit better. God is human plus. He is wiser, he is stronger, he is kinder, he is more powerful, but he's still basically us. Like God as Captain America. if you like, or God as Superman. Understandable in terms of who we are, just who we actually kind of want to be. But if we think like that, if we look at God like that, I think we're doing God this huge disservice. Because in many ways, God is incomprehensible. Almost by definition, God is transcendent. God is beyond us, so far beyond us that we cannot understand. We can know God. You know, when most of us are here this morning because we know God. We can follow God. We can relate to God through Jesus. But I'm not sure we can truly understand Him. Which is okay. That's important to remember. See, if we look at what Paul is saying in the passage, he gives us this list of 9 gifts. The Message phrases it slightly differently, but roughly this: wisdom, knowledge, faith, healing, miraculous powers, prophecy, distinguishing between spirits, speaking in different languages, interpreting different languages. That's our list of 9. And so the question here is that it? Is Paul saying this is the way the Spirit works? He has a grid of 9 things. He sees someone that he wants to bless and he goes, which that one, I will bless you with speaking in different languages. From his choice of 9. And I suspect you know where I'm going with this. I think the answer is no. That is not how it works. I don't think Paul is saying this is it. This is the definitive list of the gifts of the Spirit, capital letters all the way. One of the reasons I think that is because later in this chapter, Paul's going to give us a whole different list of spiritual gifts, and it's not the same list, which for me is a fairly clear sign that the first list is not meant to be definitive, because he changes it immediately. And then in Romans chapter 12, we have another list of spiritual gifts. And in Ephesians chapter 4, we have another list of spiritual gifts. And they overlap. There are similarities, don't get me wrong, but they're not the same. It's not Paul saying, here is the list of 9, I'm going to recite it lots of times. I think he's saying, here is our list. Here are some of the things that the Holy Spirit can do. I kind of imagine him when he's writing the Corinthian letter, and he co-writes it with someone called Sosthenes, which is a great name. And he's kind of going, right, I've mentioned the gifts of the Spirit, I've talked about the Spirit gives gifts, I better give them some ideas. Sosthenes, what kind of things? What's been going on in the church recently? Bob, he had the Spirit gifted him with wisdom, didn't he? Oh, yeah, okay, wisdom, that's a good one. Oh, and then I think they're just throwing out, for instances, I think they're throwing out ideas. And again, to be very clear, I don't think they're just inventing stuff. I mean, the Bible is inspired by God. I think the Spirit is speaking through them in these 4 instances. I'm not trying to devalue the value of this list. This is a God-given list of things that the Spirit does. I just think it's not the definitive list. I think there's more. Because Paul isn't setting out to define the capabilities of God. He's not saying, I want to put God in a box, and that box is 9 things long. Don't need some metaphors. He keeps going back to this. He goes, I'm going to look at gifts again. Here are some other things that God does. I'm going to look at gifts again. Here are some other things. Here's a different way of viewing God. Here's another angle. Here's another view. Here's another perspective on this incredible and incomprehensible God that we have. Paul isn't giving us a set of rules. He's giving us an inspiration board. He's giving us a jumping off point. Here are 9 things to get you started. But why don't you go hang out with the Spirit and see what else he can do? And all of this leads me to this question. How do we want to read the Bible? How do we choose to read the Bible? Are we trying to make God neat and tidy? To kind of set out a framework of exactly what God can and cannot do? And again, I genuinely understand the appeal of this. If I could make that work, I so would. The way I think, I don't like uncertainty. I don't like fuzziness. I don't like not knowing things. I like to have stuff pinned down. You know, trying to understand a person, difficult, genuine. Trying to understand a transcendently incomprehensible God who is eternal, very, very difficult. Very difficult, messes with my head a little bit. And if I could just go, I understand God because I put him in this box, this chart, this graph, I would. It would make my life easier. It would also, I think, make my life a lot less exciting and a lot less interesting. You might be familiar with C.S. Lewis, quite a well-known writer. He wrote the Narnia Chronicles, of which the most famous is The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. And there's a scene in that, I think it's in the film as well as in the book, in which the children have gone into Narnia en masse for the first time. They encounter Mr. Beaver, and then Mrs. Beaver, of course, and they go back to the dam and they're having a lovely tea with the beavers, and they're talking about Aslan. And this is really the first time that we're getting to hear about Aslan in the book. And most of us are like, yes, we know who Aslan is now because it's been around for ages. But when you read it, you go, oh, Aslan. And Susan asks a question, because she gets a bit, oh, this sounds worrying. Is he safe? Is Aslan safe? And Mrs. Beaver, and I feel I should do a beaver accent at this point, but come and criticise that later, so I'm just going to stick with me for now. Mrs. Beaver says, safe? Who said anything about safe? Of course he isn't safe, but he's good. He's the king, I tell you. Because, of course, Aslan, as most of us will know, Aslan the lion is the metaphor for Jesus in, spoilers, sorry, if you've not read it, but he is the Jesus character in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. He stands for Jesus in this world. Who said anything about safe? Of course he isn't safe, but he's good. He can't be pigeonholed into Susan's worldview. Susan is the 1950s worldview. It should be cozy and lovely and safe. And that's not how God or Aslan works. He doesn't slot into that. He can be dangerous and good at the same time. And God is the same. God is not safe. He can't be reduced to a simple list of 9 gifts. Paul gives us those gifts to give us a glimpse of the Spirit. Because the Spirit is this. This is what the Spirit is, but also he is more. He is infinitely more than this. I can't give you the whole picture. In John's Gospel, end of chapter 21, John says, even the whole world would not have room for the books that would be written if he tried to tell us everything about Jesus. But John's Gospel is there to give us an inkling of Jesus, an idea. This is a snapshot. It's 22 chapters long and it's a snapshot of Jesus. Paul is doing the same thing here. It's true throughout the Bible. But Jesus is not limited. God is not limited. The Spirit is not limited by what we see in the Bible. Is there anyone who imagines that Jesus did a quick head count by the lake that day and went, 5,000 people, thank goodness, because if it was 5,003, I wasn't there to sort this out. That would have been beyond my limits. Thank goodness it was only the 5,000. Or when 10 lepers come to him, is he there going, oh, good job you guys didn't have 2 more mates, or no one was getting healed today? No, I don't think any of us think like that. Jesus healed 10 lepers because there were 10 lepers in front of him. If 20 lepers had turned up, I'm reasonably confident he would have healed 20 of them. If 50, 100. We see a snapshot of what Jesus can do, but that isn't the limit, that isn't the rule. We're not defining We shouldn't have a small view of Jesus. We shouldn't have a small view of the Spirit, or of the Father, or of God entire. The Bible is not a book of rules. There are rules in it, obviously. There's can rules, there's can't rules. But they're not the point of the Bible. The Bible is a revelation of God. It is complicated, it is incomplete, it is this tiny, tiny snapshot of an infinite and incomprehensible being. But in the end, it's what we have. It's what we've been given. It's what we have to work with. So as we strive to understand it better, let's not imagine that it is the boundaries of God's being. Rather, it's a keyhole. It's the keyhole through which we can glimpse, just glimpse, the incredible, incomprehensible power and glory of God. As we read it, let's not let it keep us in, but let's read it to open our eyes to everything God is and can be and will be, so that we can do our best to love him and know him and follow him in everything that we do. Let's pray. Lord, we know that we cannot understand you, and yet we thank you that we can love you. We thank you that you do understand everything about us, and yet you still love us. Help us to come to love your word, to read it, to know it, and to enjoy it, and through it to see you. Open our eyes, Lord, to just a bit more of who you are. Help us today to grasp just a bit more of you, of your power, of your glory, of your love. Help us never to limit you, to stop short of all that you call us to be. Lord, we commit ourselves to you, to following you, to serving your kingdom. Lord, thank you for all that you speak to us.